Today on Vibe 107.5.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems. Listen carefully.
Good evening. I'm Kent Cummins, and we're in my cabaret theater here at the Fantastic Magic Center in Georgetown, Texas. And we're here for both a sad and yet an important ceremony, the Broken Wand ceremony. We've got half a dozen people here. We've got 3 more who want to be here, but I-35 is having at least 2 accidents, and so they'll be slipping in a little bit later, no doubt. But for those of you that aren't as familiar with the Broken Wand ceremony, when a magician dies, the magic community gathers and we tell stories and we share memories. And then at some point, a magician will pick up a magic wand. So the magic wand is one of the unique tools of the magician's trade. I mean, you can just see it encapsulates magic, mystery, enchantment. As Doug Henning so often said, that spirit of wonder, that sense of wonder, which is what attracted most of us to magic in the first place. And yet, without a magician to wield the wand, it's just a stick. And so at this point, the stick is broken, and although the magician is gone, the magic lives on. And that's the nature of a Broken Wand ceremony. Thank you for joining us both in the theater and online via Zoom. And several of us will have stories to tell, but before we do, let's look at a few pictures from some of Doc's parties. most of those photos were actually taken by Doc's good friend Dion Burkhardt, who lives in Onion Creek and would come to the parties, of course, but he'd bring his camera. And as a professional photographer, you can see the results. And he happens to be here with his wife, Suzanne. I've asked him if he'll just come up on stage and say a few words. Dion?
Sure.
It was my pleasure to know Doc Seaton for several years. And one thing you could say about Doc is he knew how to throw a party. He loved magic, he loved people, he enjoyed being with people and entertaining, and he really had no limits. I've been to places with him buying some magic stuff, and he'd look down and he'd say, well, I'll take that, that. Well, just give it all to me, how much is it? Doc has been one of the greatest people and one of the nicest friends that I've had. We had lots of long conversations, talked about many things. One of the things was I was fascinated with the Kennedy assassination and did a lot of research on it. And I found out that Doc was in Parkland Hospital when they brought Kennedy in. So we had many, many long discussions about that. He was a good friend, great person to know, and it's been a big loss. He spent many years having lots of fun, enjoying life, and living life to the fullest. Rest in peace, Doc. We miss you.
Thank you, Dion. You know, like most of the magicians, I met Doc at Magic Club meetings, probably over 20 years ago, certainly over 20 years ago. And I thought he was just this, kind of a funny old man who didn't really know that much about magic. And he thought I was this brash younger guy who was way too full of himself. And over the months, we found out that we were both right. We weren't really friends back then, but about 20 years ago, Ron Cartledge decided that he wanted to bring back the world-famous Austin Magic Auction. But he started small. We had our meetings at the Omni Hotel, and so he talked to our friend Dick Todd, who had a lot of really expensive magic, but he was ready to get rid of much of it. And so we just had a little auction there. I don't even remember who was auctioneer. I don't think I was, but I was there. And I don't collect magic props per se. I mean, yes, I've been saving stuff for 72 years, but I don't collect magic props for the purpose of, ooh, that's a pretty prop. I only collect props that I perform. And so as much as I loved the props, I wasn't going to bid anything until I saw the set of linking rings. Now, you may think, wait, didn't you already have linking rings? Well, yeah, sure, there was a little set in my Gilbert Misto magic set when I was still a little kid, and that's when I learned. And then when I was in Germany, I got to go to, what was the name of it? Zauberkönig, the Magic King in Munich. And they had these rings that were this big around. And I thought, oh, that's great, I can put them over my head, but you can't do it, the little ones from the magic set. And somewhere, I swear, I saw a Jungle Jim movie on some Saturday morning back when I was a little kid in Del Rio. And somebody, all of the natives were wearing rings around their necks. And so Jungle Jim comes in and takes the rings off their necks and does the linking rings with them. I thought, oh man, how come I can't put the rings over my neck? And so I bought these, and I performed with them for a very long time. But I had an idea. I had bought this box, which looks like a book, and I had the idea of putting a label on it that said Lord of the Rings. And I thought, I'll put my linking rings in there, and it'll tie into the movies, which were very popular at the time. And I said, oh wow, that's going to be great. Until I measured, and my rings were bigger than the book. A lot bigger. And so, I thought, well, I could cut this off and move it over. And I needed a set that's a little bit smaller. Oh, do we have, come right on in. Your reserve table is right there. I hear the traffic was horrendous, but thank you for being here. So I was just telling you that I had this book box for Lord of the Rings, but my rings wouldn't fit in it. And Dick Todd had a pair that looked like a pair, it's a set of 8, that looked like it would fit perfectly. And so, I bid on them. And some guy in the back bid more than me. And so I bid more. And he bid more. And I bid more. And he bid more. And I'm fairly smart about, I've worked in 2 different magic stores. I had my own online magic shop when I ran Magic Camp. I know what things are worth generally. And I knew that we were at about the wholesale price of a set of rings. And I can buy wholesale as long as I'm a magic dealer. But what the heck, I don't have to pay shipping, I don't have to wait, I'll just get them. So I went ahead and bid, and he bid. And I bid, and he bid, and I bid. Now we're up to retail. I said, okay, I'll pay retail. I bid, and he bid. Okay, I'll pay a little bit above retail. You know where this story is going. Yeah, no matter what I bid, that crazy guy in the back outbid me. Well, sure, it was Doc Seaton, that old guy that didn't know much about magic. And being full of myself, I went back during the break. Doc, what are you doing? That's more than retail. Well, I don't care. I've always wanted a set of linking rings. Why do you want a set of linking rings? Oh, I've just always thought it was a beautiful trick. Okay, but see, and I explained to him why I needed a particular set that was that size. Incidentally, this is the size I needed. These are the rings that he and I were bidding on and that he got and I didn't. But you can tell there's a punchline to this story because I explained it to him and he said, oh, well, what are you going to do with your bigger rings? I don't know. I'll trade you on one condition. That you teach me how to do the linking rings. And I said, okay, mine are bigger and more expensive. No, but this is what I need. Sure, I'll do that. And I had never taught linking rings before. I've been a magic teacher for years, even at that point, but I'd never taught linking rings, so I had to really think about what is it that I do? How can I help somebody that doesn't know much about it? And we made the appointment, and I went over there, and I started showing him, and he liked it. And he was pretty good, actually. He was a good student, not just a good teacher himself. And we started talking, and we found that we had so much in common. I mean, thing after thing after thing that one of us would talk about, the other one would have an immediate connection to. And by the time that day was over, we were friends. And so I know the day we became friends, his wife Millie took this picture. And I can tell you that those are the 8 rings from Germany that are now in his collection, and these are the rings that he outbid me for. So, if it weren't for the linking rings, I don't know if Doc and I would ever become friends. But we did become friends. We became, in fact, in the last 5 or 10 years, best friends. And so obviously I will miss him horribly. I'm honored to be able to conduct this ceremony for him. I wish he had had an opportunity to see this place. He would have loved it. But pandemic, Now we've got other people here who also love Doc. And by coincidence, one of them asked me if it'd be okay to perform linking rings. And I said, oh, that'll fit in perfectly. And so, let me put these away. And introduce you to Paprika.
Thanks, Kent. Wow, it's so amazing being here at this magical place, and I love hearing the story of how you and how Kent and Doc met. I had no idea how all this happened, and this picture is just perfect for that. And yes, Doc, I haven't known him very long, but he was a legend way before I knew him. He had many stories, and who is this Doc Seaton I keep hearing about? Well, I finally met him a couple of years ago when he had a book signing for your book, for Kent's book, and then a year later a magic competition. And it was very special for me because I won second. And there's a picture you might have seen in the slideshow that was part of that. So I created this little linking ring routine in honor of him. So let's give it a whirl, see how it goes. So, Doc Seaton. a magical man, a legendary organizer. You were one of a kind. You saw life a bit differently. You loved to take situations and connect them together. Connect people, connect things that could happen. And that created magic. It created different ways of looking at the world. These ideas would become into reality, a lot like the Seaton's magical sideshow, which I got to perform in as well. Dan Page and him created that. It gave us places to play, to perform, to be part of the magical community when I was just starting out in this. Well, I liked Doc Seaton's creativity. He loved to put things together in ways that you normally wouldn't. In fact, the creativity was always a bit unusual. One of the neatest things that he did was create Doc's Drive-In. Yes, a place with 2 giant theaters, a stage in the middle, and a way to project to the big audiences. That was a very interesting way to look at life because it was way ahead of his time. He was a futurist, looking at what could be possible. And then, lo and behold, amazing. Now, Doc, he has seemed to have, well, at least physically left this plane and gone off to other realities. Doc, such a special guy, has a way of looking at things just a bit differently. In fact, I like that he has a way of checking out reality in such a way that it's multi-dimensional. So Doc Seaton, we miss you. I thank you. I love that I got to know you, and I love the stories. And Kent, thanks so much for inviting me here today. Blessings to you, Doc Seaton.
Thank you, Paprika. She mentioned Doc Seaton's Magic Sideshow. I have somehow wound up with way too many of these flyers because I was helping them promote the street. We had a couple street magic festivals, and it's got pictures of a lot of the performers on it and so on. And so I put these out so that anybody that's here in person can pick one up and keep it as a souvenir. But it occurs to me there are probably more people watching via Zoom. Okay, if you send me an email, Kent@magichotline.com, Kent@magichotline.com, and tell me that you'd like to have one of these, I can send you the image and you can print it out yourself. Or if, no, that's not real, I want one of the ones that you actually used, well then give me your snail mail address and I'll mail you one, because otherwise they're just going in the recycle bin and that would be a shame. Well, as you may have noticed, people walking past the camera, Peter the Adequate and Bethel Fredstrom, Blackbird, have arrived despite the traffic on IH-35, and the current president of the Texas Association of Magicians, and also president of the Society of American Magicians, Austin Assembly 206, is Blackbird, and I've asked him if he'll share some memories of Doc. Bethel, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So, Doc was amazing because everything was possible with Doc. You came up with an idea and he never said no. He said, yes, we can do that. He was a builder. He could construct things. He helped people construct things. And when I moved to Austin, I wasn't at all into the Society of American Magicians, because I wanted magic to be a little exciting. I asked IBM, the International Brotherhood of Magicians, if we could have a competition. And they said, no, we do not compete. We're a family club. And SAM was for the professionals, was the technicians, the card sharks. And I was more kids magician, so I didn't join SAM until Doc decided we're gonna have a competition. So I had to join. And the first competition was a lot of fun, and it changed a few magicians in Austin. For instance, the winner constructed a new magic trick just for the competition. The winner was Peter Hendricks, and the trick that he won with was his famous sponge ball routine. And Peter's nom de guerre is the adequate, and he was obviously adequate for this. But more fun is the magician that came in second in this competition was John Maverick. And he chose to add to his name Austin's second best magician. And that's what he still lives by and runs by. So I joined SAM, and I'm now the president of SAM and also the president of Texas Association of Magicians. But Doc has meant even more than that, because when I moved to Austin, I was performing at the Fantastic Magic Camp that at that time was Kent Cummins' Magic Camp. And after a couple of years, Kent asked me to be on the board of his Magic Camp. And at one meeting, 10 years ago, almost to the day, we had a board meeting at Doc's place. And Kent informed us that he was going to close down the Magic Camp. Doc, of course, said, you can't do that, Kent. You have to let someone take over. So in that meeting, we started discussion if we could take it over. So I, together with two other campers, took over Fantastic Magic Camp, and it's thanks to Doc that the Fantastic Magic Camp is still around. Now, there was one magic trick that Doc liked that I used to perform. I'm going to perform it for you here, but before you can do the magic trick, I have to tell you it's important how you present it. So I needed to have a box that looked nice, a box that could be seen, but that would still fit in my bag. And I asked around, I said, I need a box of this size, but I need it to be as small as possible. Where in the world can I find the smallest box of this size? And they said, you have to go to Korea. So I went to Korea and asked them to build this box for me. And they built this box, and it was just the right size. And inside the box I have a die, but of course the die has to be visible from a distance. So I asked around, I said, I want the biggest die you can get in this size. Where should I get it? And they said, if you want it to be big, you have to go to Texas. So I had a Texas person build me this box. This is the biggest box in the world in this size. And inside the box, of course, is the magic trick that Doc liked so much. Now, the interesting part here is that the guys that built the biggest box in the world were actually able to make the box bigger, sorry, the die bigger than the box that it was held in. Not so easy to explain, but let me show you. Now, of course, the rope, this is another typical Texas thing, because Texas is all cowboys and longhorns and lassos. So I don't know if that's why he liked this, but this rope also happens to be the longest 8-foot rope in the world. Oh, there is no other 8-foot long ropes in the world longer than this one, I promise you. So what I did with this rope, I made a knot. And another thing that I learned about Texans is that Texans always want to be better than everybody else, right? Because they are, right? So if I make one knot on this rope, the rope will make another knot on itself, another knot on itself, another knot on itself, until the entire rope is full of knots like this. Just to prove to me that it's better than I am. You can give the rope a small hand, I'm still in charge here, okay? Now of course what's left for me to do is to undo these knots, and I can do that by magic. 1, 2, 3 rings. And of course the last knot is the most difficult one, because this is the one that I made. So for this one I need all of you to help. Can you all give me a little magic? Thank you very much. Thank you, Doc, for everything you have done for the Austin Magic community, for fantastic Magic Camp, for Society of Magicians, Assembly 206, and for Texas Association of Magicians as well, of course. We miss you, Doc, but I know your magic will always be there.
And, yeah, Peterson, sure up. Would you join me on stage next? He mentioned Peter Hendricks, Peter the Adequate, who my wife and I saw performing at a restaurant. We didn't ask to have a magician come over and perform. We just were there for tacos. But Margot surprisingly said, "Oh, well, this magician's actually entertaining." And it wasn't too long after that we became friends. And when we had the idea of starting the Magic Camp, which was 1993, happened to be the year I turned 50, and when we decided, yes, we need to do that, I called the one person whose opinion I really respected in the world of magic. I called Peter and I said, "Hey, here's this idea, you know, we would teach magic, juggling, puppets, what do you think?" He says, "Absolutely, we need to do that." And he was right-hand man for the 18 years that I ran the camp. I'm fond of saying when your kids turn 18, you gotta let them go. But, and now, he's the camp director for the existing camp. So he didn't tell me he wanted to get up and say a few words, but I wanted to introduce him to you.
And I do have some words to say. You've heard a lot about people mentioning that Doc was somebody who wouldn't say no to something, he would find a way to make it happen. And that is true. But also true is that Doc was somebody that was very hard to say no to. He was very good about getting people not to say no to them. When I first met Doc was through the Magic Club. He helped revitalize the Magic Club at the time. The SAM had always kind of gone up and down, just like all the clubs in Austin. Sometimes one would have more people, the other times the other would have more people. And the SAM had been in a bit of a slump, and then Doc helped build it up, and he built it up by inviting a lot of his personal friends, by inviting other magicians. He was really good at calling people up and saying, "We have a meeting next month, are you going to be there?" And he would harangue people, and they would be there. Was one of the people he would call regularly. Then he and I became sort of good friends, but more than that, he became kind of like a mentor to me. Not on magic things, but on life things. Doc was really good with interpersonal relationships, and so on, asking for advice on different things. And at one point, I'd gotten an opportunity to leave Austin and go perform at a show in Branson, Missouri. I had an offer to go perform there, and I was unsure about it. So one of the people that I approached about it was Doc, and I asked him for his advice, and what he told me was, "You're young enough to be able to reinvent yourself at least 2 or 3 more times." And so I took his advice and left Austin, left the Magic Camp, left the Magic Club, went off to do a show in Branson. It ended up being a disaster. I ended up having to reinvent myself. Well, a lot of good came out of it. I stayed in Branson for about 6 years, and then eventually came back to Austin when I found out that Kent had sold the Magic Camp. And one of the very first people that I talked to was Doc, and he called me up as soon as I came back to Austin. And this wasn't the first call. He'd also called me when I was in Branson, asking me for a favor. And he also called me just before I left Austin. He called me just before I left to Austin because he said, we're going to have a magic competition and I really need you to compete. And I hadn't really thought about it. I had never done any competitions in it anywhere else. But he kept insisting that I really should do it. And so I did, and I'm glad I did because it ended up creating the piece that has now become my signature piece that I do at every single show that I do. He called me when I was in Branson because there was going to be a magic convention here, and he said, are you coming down for the magic convention? And I said, well, I'm not sure, but he said, you really should. And I'm having this Doc Seaton sideshow, and between him and Kent, they talked me to coming back down and doing an underwater skate down there, which I probably wouldn't have done if it hadn't been for the two of them really needling me and doing it, and it turned out being loads of fun. It was actually the last time that I ever performed my underwater skate. By the time I'd come back again, I was a little too old to do an underwater skate. And then when I came back to Austin, he called me again and he said, so I have some questions for you. He says, I want to know what's happening with the Magic Camp. I know it's been bought up, but what's happening with it? And I said, well, they've asked me if I'd be interested in becoming the director of the Magic Camp, and I'm thinking about it. My concern is, I came back here and I have lost all of my contacts from performing. I don't have my usual income. I need to find a way to stay afloat. And Doc, who has an answer for everything, says, well, how much would it cost you to stay, to pay for all your bills and everything is for the next 2-3 months? And I did some rough calculation, and he said, okay, I will give you money so you don't have to worry about a job for the first 3 months. If you'll step up and take the job with Magic Camp. And I said, sure, sounds great, I'll be happy to do that. And then in typical Doc fashion, he goes, but I have another favor to ask. We want the Magic Club to have some really exciting meetings. And nobody's stepping up to volunteer for it. So I'm going to ask you if you'll step up and agree to create the themes for the Magic Club for the next year. I'm like, yes, Doc. Yeah, I can do that. And I'm really glad I did because it got me back into it. But Doc was always one of these people who, if Doc asked you to do something, you really felt you had to do it. He got me involved with the magic auction, with the club, with the contest, and then back with the club again, and back with the camp. So thank you, Doc. Thank you for all the advice you gave me on life matters, on dealing with people, and thank you for pushing me, because it made me a better magician and a better person. Gonna miss you.
Thank you, Peter. And there's another piece to that story. Our lives intertwine in so many ways. See, the next person I called after Peter was my mom. Because she was a puppeteer. She was a member of Puppeteers of America. She had made my first 2 little puppets when I was 6 years old. And when I left the house, she said, well, okay. So she started doing puppet shows. And so I asked her, would you consider coming to Austin for a month, because that's how long camp was planned to be the first year, and teach the puppetry curriculum? And she said yes. And then I said something about she was the puppetry coordinator. She says, well, my official title is Grandmother in Residence. And that stands for GER. And if the kids don't do what I think they should be doing, that's what they'll hear from me. GER. And of course she was just always friendly, always delightful. She was a perfect grandmother. But she created our puppetry curriculum, she taught the classes, and as the camp got longer and longer and took more and more of the summer, she spent more and more of that time with us, and of course that was wonderful as well. But then she had a stroke, and ultimately, although I would bring her in the wheelchair to camp, she couldn't teach. It affected Brokaw's area of the brain, very common. She lost her speech, and so she really couldn't teach puppetry anymore, but she loved being with the kids. The kids loved her. And so she was then purely the grandmother in residence. But eventually we reached the point where even that was just too hard for her. And it was Peter who came to me and said, I have an idea. We need a grandpa in residence. And it was that suggestion that caused me to invite Doc to become a formal part of the camp. And by formal part of the camp, he wound up on the board of directors. He wound up making sure that we were doing the right thing, even when we didn't know what the right thing was. So, now, one of the things, once Doc and I became friends, we did all kinds of stuff together because we had so much in common. But he particularly liked one of the classes that I taught at Magic Camp. Well, I'm going to give you a very shortened version of it, but it's Lesson 2, Tools of the Magician's Trade. And what I would do is I would have the students, I taught this to adults at University of Texas, but then at Magic Camp we're teaching elementary age children, and I would have them say, you know, what are tools of the magician's trade? And they'd say top hat, rabbit, cape, boxes, money, cards. And all of those things are tools of the magician's trade, but they're also used by other people in other things. But when they said magic wand, well, that was unique to the magician. And so I would typically show people my magic wand collection. And if I were to show you all of it right now, we'd be through before midnight, I think. But I'm just going to show you a few of my favorites. This one was made by Fred Scott Donaldson, the great Scott. When I came to Austin in 1976, he was the dominant magician in Austin. He and Judy did more shows than anybody else. They had the only magic store. He was an inventor, he was a builder, and he was a mentor to all of us. So I watched him make these wands one time, and I bought several of them, and I'm glad, because when Scott passed away, Judy asked me if I would do the broken wand ceremony for him. And you'll see a photo of that broken wand in my museum back there. And I had never done one. I knew what it was, but I had all kinds of research. See, every major magic organization has a version of the broken wand ceremony. And so I read one which seemed to be mostly religious and one which seemed to be most... Judy says, don't do the religious one. That's not Fred. And incidentally, aside from the fact that that was my first broken wand ceremony, aside from the fact that it was for one of my very best friends, it was also somebody who was a friend regardless of whether or not we were talking about magic. Everyone called him Scott. That was his name, the great Scott. I called him Fred. Everybody calls Doc Stanley Seaton Doc. Excuse me, that's probably Ron on my phone, if you can help him. Poor Ron, he's lost in the horrible traffic, I suspect. But back to the story, everybody calls Doc Stanley Seaton Doc, but I call him Stan. And so tonight, I can hear her on the phone. Hi, Ron. He's trying to get here, I promise. But while we're waiting for him to find his way through the bad traffic, a little more about the magic wand collection. So this is the traditional magician's wand, black with white tips. Certainly the first wand I ever had. In our culture, the Western culture, this is the traditional wand. But it's not what I used in my show. This is the wand I used in my show. I don't know how well you can see it. It's red lucite, has silver on the ends. And this was made, not by Scott, by Judy. So he's making the traditional wand, she's making these beautiful wands. And since when I perform, typically wear a cape with a red lining, the red magic wand just seemed like a good one for me. Now, this is a very sad story. This was my favorite magic wand. I mean, I just don't know. I sent it to the cleaners, you know, I had it in my pocket. And when it came back from the cleaners, they had pressed it and okay, that's not true, that's not true. What actually happened is it rolled into the street when I was a kid, and okay, that's not true either. What's actually true is that I took a ruler that I had from when I was in school and wasn't using anymore, painted it white and then painted the middle part black so I'd have a flat magic wand because I had a flat rabbit that I pulled out of a typical opera hat, and those opera hats fold flat. So I had a flat hat, whoop, then a flat rabbit after waving the flat magic wand. I ask the kids when I show them this, what's that? It's a stick. Yeah, so are those. Yeah, but those are magic wands. This is just a stick. I said, no, it's black with white tips. It's a magic wand. And they'll say, no. I say, I know it's a magic wand because I didn't make this. I went to a magician's convention and I went to one of the magic dealers and they were selling magic tricks and books and these magic wands. I paid $3 for it. I bought this from a magic dealer. It's a real magic wand. And if you were maybe more like Merlin and less like Mandrake, maybe you'd use a wand that looks more like this kind of a stick instead of the polished sticks. And this wand, it's pretty easy for people to tell what's different about it, but there's more different about it than just the colors being different. This is not made of wood, it's made of metal. This is a carrying case. A lot of magicians do the trick where you take a long needle and poke it through the balloon and the balloon doesn't pop most of the time. Well, the needle has to be kept clean and straight because if it bends, then the balloon's more likely to pop. And so they were trying to find some way that they could store it, and I thought, well, maybe a cylinder, paint it black, put tips on it, and it's a magic wand. This looks like the one Fred made, but if you were a little bit closer, you would see this is what I call the environmental magic wand. See my friend Chris Walden, who happens to be running the Zoom meeting right now, and who helped me design the theater. He and I first started working together, 1994 was, he actually sold the idea of an environmental magic kit as something that Texas Natural Resource Conservation Commission could use for training people about the environment, but they would use magic. And not only did he convince them, but they actually got an EPA grant to fund it. But he was very, very young then. I had a business that was beginning to get started. He didn't yet, and so he called me and said, hey, you got a business, I've got an idea. And we got together and created the environmental magic kit. This wand is made out of a pants coat hanger tube. Okay? Picture the coat hanger with the cardboard tube. Some of those are white, and if that's the case, you only have to paint the middle black or perhaps wine tape around it. But some of them are brown. So in that case, you paint them all black or wine tape around it and then put white tape around the ends. And it's hollow, which means you can hide things in it. So this magic wand that looks very traditional actually is a case of helping the environment. And when I do environmental magic shows, I make a big deal about that because if I were to buy a traditional magic wand, it's probably made in China these days. And so we have the shipping from China, we have the postage, we have the... My carbon footprint, in other words, is way too big. But if I make one that looks about the same out of a cardboard tube that I already have around the house, that I was going to throw away anyway, well, that's environmentally conscious. And so all you have to throw away is that piece of wire. Don't you dare. Do you know what that piece of wire is really good for? In the first place, it's got a hook, so you can hang it. I've got one of these in my closet right now. You hang it, and then you can bend up the ends, and you put belts, or ties, or jewelry, or whatever. And so you've got something that works really, really well, doesn't cost anything, keeps it out of the landfill. whoa, that one's really different. No, it's not. This is a cardboard pants tube. Also, this is what happens when Magic Camp gets hold of a project. See, when I was teaching the kids to make a magic wand, I assumed they'd all want their magic wands to be black with white tips. I was wrong, and they were definitely right. Isn't that beautiful? Completely different, and yet just the same. A magic wand doesn't have to be black with white tips or black with silver tips. For example, if you were a fairy princess, it would look ridiculous to be holding one of those, but maybe not so silly to be holding one of these. Sparkly silver. I like it. It's a magic wand. Now, back to the traditional again. This magic wand may be my favorite for now because in 2019 I realized I was having my 70th year as a magician. Not full-time pro, I've only been full-time since 1986, but I got my first magic set and said I'm going to be a magician in 1949. And so that was 70 years, so I had to celebrate. And people that came to the evening show got this souvenir that says 70 years of magic. And you know, if you don't have one, I've still got a few. You can have one on your way out. For our people at home, that's Kent@magichotline.com. And I've never had to mail one, but I will if you really want one and you're far away. Okay. I said not all magic wands have to be the same. This one's square, which means it doesn't roll off the table like mine did when Paprika first came up here to rehearse. And it's completely different colors. It's made out of a block of wood. And well, it's a dowel, I suppose, but it's a square dowel instead of a round one. And sure, Magic Camp, you bet. And this one was made by one of my best friends at Magic Camp. Started as a camper, became counselor, staff member, and it had a quartz crystal right there. And the quartz crystal got lost, so now it doesn't work anymore. Okay. You may say this is not a magic wand. Well, I suppose you're right, but T. Myers, master of everything and keeper of the truth, who for years ran the world's largest balloon company right in South Austin, used to use this performing. He called it his Waka Waka wand. And one of the purposes of a magic wand is misdirection, making people not pay quite so much close attention to the sneaky stuff you're doing. And I promise, excellent distraction. So although it's not technically a magic wand, and now you're definitely going to say this isn't a magic wand, but you notice I said in Western culture, well, Japanese magicians don't use magic wands like that, not traditionally, but they do use fans, and they use them the same way that Western magicians use the magic wand. It's a distraction, it's something that sets them apart for people to look at, it is a tool of misdirection, and it's sort of a symbol of what they're doing. You've seen perhaps Japanese fan dancers, typically women who whip these fans open and it's beautiful. So the men, most of the Japanese magicians are still men, that's changing thankfully. But when they whip open the fan, that's something a little bit different. And so that's interesting. All right, this is not a magic wand. It's one of these, which I think I got from some mail order company, a bunch of them for Magic Camp, because I thought they were fun. But when I got them, I thought to myself, wow, that is so cool. What if I painted the middle part black and maybe the outer part's white? I could sell them for like, you know, $3 or something, because I don't think this cost $1. And then before I ever did that, I opened up Jeannie the Conjurer's magazine, and there's an ad for squealing magic wands, only $18.98 or something like that. I mean, some ridiculous price. And I thought, oh man, we always have more ideas than we can implement. And that's okay. Before what's the status with Ron?
He is in Round Rock, driving up. He's probably about 20 minutes away.
Okay. Well, I should probably show you this magic wand. Isn't that a great magic wand? Somebody was playing with those snakes that come in the peanut brittle cans and realized if instead of snake cloth, you use black and white cloth, you'd have a really funny, fun magic wand. I like it. Not all magic wands are this traditional size that fit easily in the tabletop. This magic wand, for example, which happens to be made out of sponge, a really big one, but there are also smaller ones. This one was actually made by Fred Scott Donaldson, the great Scott. He made them in several different sizes, and it's made the same way, it's just a smaller dowel. But the way he made these, he went to McCoy's, not Home Depot. He went to McCoy's, I know because I went with him once, and he bought these dowels, in this case really skinny, thin ones, and in the case of the regular magic wand, a little thicker. And then he took them home and he cut them into sizes that would fit evenly so you're not wasting any of the dowel. Okay, this is 1, 2, 3 out of 1, maybe. This is probably 4. Anyway, and he would paint them white, and then with clothespins, he would hang them up in the garage, because the magic shop was in the garage. And garages in Texas, that white paint would dry in an hour, but he'd wait till the next day, and then he'd put masking tape here, and then paint the middle part black, and then hang it up again, and then he took very, very, very fine sandpaper, because he was a craftsman, and very finely sanded, and did a little touch-up if he needed to, and I think this one sold for $1 back then. Got one a little bit smaller. There we go. This is a plastic one, and it came in a little toy magic set from a toy store. That's not the smallest one I have. This is one. Also happens to be plastic. These are white plastic tips. It makes me think you could make a magic wand out of what do you call those things? A Q-tip. Yes, absolutely. All you have to do is just paint. Okay, never mind. Anyway, this is not the smallest magic wand I have, but it is a magic wand that we give away when we sell the little can-do book of magic that I created for kids. Okay, it's not my smallest one. It's here we go. This one actually could have been made out of a matchstick. I don't know if you can even really see it. And it comes with a trick called the levitation wand, where there's a playing card. You just take a playing card and you put the wand on the playing card, and then you wiggle your fingers and it rises up. It's really a very clever little trick, but of course it has to be lightweight, and this is very, very lightweight. That's not my smallest one. Got it. Okay. This is the very smallest one, and it's used for little bitty tricks. Okay. Put it over here where I don't lose it.
Close up to that.
Excellent. Now, I think it would be a shame if we closed everything down before Ron got here. So we're going to give him a little bit of extra time, and I thought, let's see. I should have brought 20 more of the magic wands. No. I'll teach you a trick with the magic wand. Here, we'll use this one. Let's use the let's use the environmental magic wand. I like it. You rub it on your hair. This is a trick that Peter can't do. Sorry. No, have you ever rubbed a balloon in your hair and then put it, against the wall and it sticks? Yeah, well, that's not magic, it's static electricity. You can do the same thing with the wand. I got one that's a little lightweight. There. Now, if you're not familiar, many of you will be familiar with this. I've seen it in the back of cereal boxes and in kids' magic books. But if you're not familiar with it, prepare yourself for a paradigm shift. Fall. Now, thank you. There is another way to do that, and that's there. I know you think it's being held by my thumbs, but it's not. See, it's not being held by that thumb or that thumb. Paradigm shift. And the funny thing about that is that you'd think, Gesundheit, you'd think that people would notice that you're missing a finger. But it's actually called Gestalt psychology. See, our brain helps us by not paying attention to things that don't matter. And it doesn't matter how many fingers somebody has. What matters is what kind of glue they're using to hold the wand, or whatever. And so, in many parts of our life, we actually use Gestalt psychology. Wow. Okay, I think, because I promised people that the ceremony is normally an hour, that we should all actually do the formal wand breaking now. And then those of us that can't stick around will stick around for Ron. I have done 5 of these ceremonies. Tonight is number 5. The first one I used the wand made by the great Scott. But in the other 4, in every case, I asked my friend Chris Walden to make the wand so that it would be something special just for that magician. Number 2 was Mike Winslet, Sweetie the Clown. Number 3, Ramon Galindo. Number 4, Bob Carroll. This will be the 3rd one in less than 9 months. Mm-hmm. And that's not what the Broken Wand ceremony is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a rare occasion. And I hope in the near future it will be. But Chris, do we have a magic wand? If not, I have a few here.
This one was specially crafted for a duck.
It's the traditional size, shape, and colors.
Elbow to fingertip.
Excellent size. A little light compared to the one I'm used to, but a very nice wand. But as we said at the very beginning, even though the magic wand is unique, even though it's one of the few tools of the magician's trade that only a magician is likely to have, it's meaningless without the magician. Without the magician to wield the wand, it's just a stick. And so, it's my sad duty now to break the wand. And although we may not see this magician again, because of our memories, because of the stories, we'll never lose the magic. And you know, when we like what a magician does, what do we usually do? We usually applaud, right? When we like what a magician does. But when we love the act, when the magician has inspired us, as Doc Seaton has done for all of us here and all of you there, we typically don't just applaud. We rise to our feet. We give them a standing ovation. I don't care if you're in the kitchen, the bedroom, stand up. Let's give Doc a well-deserved standing ovation for a life well-lived and full of magic. And now, that concludes the official ceremony. Those who would like to stay around for a while, by all means, we will record Ron's thoughts when he gets here. If you'd like to stay and say hi to him or listen to his thoughts, by all means, have a seat, have another drink. If it's time for you to go, that's perfectly fine as well. This ends the official ceremony. We'll start back up again when Ron gets here so that we have that recorded. Thanks, everybody.
And if anyone on the Zoom meeting would like to share something, you are welcome to. Just raise your hand by going down to reactions and raise hand, and I can put you on screen.
He's on Leander Road, or crossing Leander Road.
Are we still on?
We are.
You're in front of the camera?
Oh, sorry.
Gotta talk to him.
Well, you can
Talk
be in
to
front of the
everybody.
camera.
Talk to everybody.
Well, I want to give a natural break so that people feel comfortable leaving.
Well,
if they want
this
to.
this gives that natural feeling of someone standing in front of your table. Yeah, it's-
Now, where are those wands?
Any memories of Doc Seaton coming up?
well, regrettably, I did not get to connect with Doc as much as I might have liked. You know, I knew him. We respected each other. He was always nice to me, but I did not create the kind of relationship that some of these other people describe. I had a few opportunities.
Put yourself on camera so we can see you.
No, I am the mysterious voice from beyond, in a world.
So you did not meet him?
No, I met him, we knew each other, but I didn't hang out with him. I never went to visit him without somebody else. I was usually a tag-along. And, you know, we would chit-chat here and there at a meeting or a gathering, but we never really connected. And over the last few years, I wanted to change that, but then he began to have his own issues, and it was less possible to make that connection, and then impossible.
Well, I don't know if I could ask, Dan Page has a lot of stories about Doc Seaton's magical sideshow.
Sure. So Dan was on earlier. He's not on. Oh wait, no, I see
Yes, I
Dan.
do see Dan. So
Yeah,
I don't know,
Dan's there.
Dan, if you can hear us, we're
So Dan, if
asking
you,
for some stories, because
Yeah.
you knew Doc really well. And Brad, you're there too. Do you have anything you want to say?
everyone
There's
should be
Dan.
allowed to unmute themselves.
There's Dan.
Okay.
Hi, Dan. Yeah, hi Dan, can
Yeah,
you tell
yeah.
us some things
I'm-
about your
I'm on my phone, so it's not
Don't
optimal
worry about
from
that.
my laptop. Actually, I was looking for. My sister had written a bio about Doc for Doc Seaton's Magic Sideshow, and gave a lot about him and his history and things that were pertinent to the magic community. And I was looking for it now. It must be on my old Mac. So that means I'm going to have to go research to find this bio. But it was a good bio on him about his life and his interest in magic.
Well, could you tell us about how you guys created the sideshow and what Doc's involvement was with that?
Well, it actually started the year before when Austin had the convention here in 2010. And he wanted to create a special show called the inaugural Austin Street Magic Festival. And he corralled me, being the chairman of this thing. And also Arsene Lupin, who gathered all the street performers, really high quality street performers. And then I started selling booth space and stuff. And also John Maverick was key to this because we had a rain option because the show was going to go on no matter what. And so John was well connected with all the downtown restaurants and bars and stuff. And so the plan was to after the or if we got rained out, which we did, by the way. Boy, and Trixie Bond almost switched by lightning. That's another story.
Oh.
It's true.
Wow.
The lightning storm came up. But Ray Anderson had very nicely offered Esther to have
Cobra. And
I'm sorry, what was the question? Oh, Ray Anderson had said that he would offer to be MC. He'd offer the stage and offer to MC anybody who wanted to perform at Esther's on the stage. And so that was the main thing that was happening when it got rained out. Everybody rushed to Esther's and watched the continuation of the show with Michael Dimsdale and Ken Stevenson and other well-known amateurs and professionals that get up there and performed at Esther's. And we never did have to fall back on the going to around the bars. That just never worked. And restaurant stuff, that just didn't work, except for El Sol y la Luna with at Nilda de la Yata's restaurant. She offered her stage also. But the
that place is sadly gone as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I learned something about Doc that was unique to him was he stuffed I don't know $400 or $500 bills in my pocket and said, you need these will take care of any problem you got. And I said, okay, well, whatever, Doc, I'll hold on to it. And sure enough, when we went to El Sol La Luna, the tech guy said, I ain't gonna do this for less than $100. I said, done. I just whipped out him one of the $100 and gave it to him. And sure enough, then we had a tech guy for the show at El Sol La Luna. but Doc knew that, money solves, will motivate people to do things that you want them to do. And so he injected money. Well, he injected money for sure into that show. And then also at the Doc Seaton Magic Sideshow, it was a similar thing. He injected a lot of money into it just because he loved magic and he loved to see other performers performing magic. And that's where I met a lot of the people outside of the magic community. But it was fun working with him. He loved projects. He loved to have a project going. It excited him. And as someone had mentioned earlier, he really knew how to affect your behavior to make it align with what he wanted your behavior to be.
Well, hey Dan, would you have any pictures of the sideshow and of the street festival that you could maybe post at some point in the email or on the Facebook page so that?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people. Actually, you should have a lot of these photos. Or was that the Street Magic Festival? No, that was the Street Magic Festival. The people who performed there and took part got make sure they had CD copies, DVD copies of all the photos and everything. And Ellen Dunn and Dana. I can't remember the last name now. Took photos at the Street Magic Show. Now, Augustine Tosh took a lot of photos that day of the Street Magic Festival. He would be the one to contact folks. I have some of them, but he took a lot of photos. And he was very good at it. And his wife Heather also had videos. There was videos of the performances at the Street Magic Festival. but not the sideshow. Unless people have them independent.
Well, I was so fortunate to be able to meet him at the competition. I think it was December of 2018. Put me on, I guess.
Yeah.
And but the Magic Sideshow, I did briefly meet him. I'm gonna get on camera here. Hang on.
You could step up onto the stage.
All right. Hi,
There's a
everybody.
stool there if you'd like to.
So
Have a seat, be
we're
informed.
filling time here, but it's good to fill time with the doc's
Well, we're not
stories.
filling time, but Eddie
We're
Memorial
sharing.
people hang out afterwards and tell stories and experiences, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and I'm so happy to be have met him at the sideshow, Dan, and that you invited me to perform there. That was my first joining in with the Magicians of Austin, and I was pretty blown away by the set that you had there, and you had created a really great entrance and a whole block of magic and shows. You know what I'm talking about, Dan, right?
Oh yeah.
There was basically the welcome tent that my man and other people had helped
draw
draw people into the shows.
There was the close-up tent, and then there was the stage. And so basically the first tent was to have somebody magic at the bar. I had a bar created just for that show that I still have, by the way. And it was, you could do close-up magic there, impromptu close-up magic. And then the tent behind that was the close-up tent, and we had scheduled performers. You know, we had time slots for everybody, as you well know, and had a lot of performers.
All right, Ron, you made it.
Well,
Glad I was able to fill some time with Rhonda.
Yes, thank you, Dan.
Jerry,
Jerry,
Thank you, Dan.
welcome. My pleasure.
Ron.
I'm glad I could be a small part.
The stage is yours. We've been waiting for you. Come,
Would you like to
come
go?
tell us how you met Doc.
Come talk about, do you want to take your mask off? Want to take your mask off?
Take it off.
Yeah, take it off. There you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ron Cartledge.
Well, it's an interesting story on how I met Doc. There was a hotel that's located at the intersection of Ben White and I-35. And myself, Opie Houston, and
Bob Carroll, maybe?
huh?
Bob Carroll, maybe?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's what I'm thinking about, Carol. And then of course Doc. He was the last one to come into our group. And all of us got identification cards to be in the Sun Club. And so we made it a habit during the week going up to the hotel and sitting in the hot tub and talking about all kinds of things. And so that's kind of how, I don't remember who actually brought Doc into the group, but those were the four. And what happened was that they had a dressing room for the men and a dressing room for the women. And we'd go in there and change clothes and go get in the hot tub. Well, it just so happened that there was a guy that kept coming back to the dressing room. And the hotel told us that they were having money stolen out of the pockets of the people who were in their health club. And so I don't remember exactly who it was, but somebody from the hotel got us involved in this search for this crook. And we thought we knew who he was. And he would come in there every day and play like he was going to do something, but he didn't. And what happened was that the hotel wanted us to help them to locate this guy when he came into the hotel. And so we did that, and we gave the clue when we saw him come in. And later we found out that the hotel had put invisible, kind of an invisible paint type thing on the lockers so they could catch him if he touched the locker. And so we gave the signal to the hotel, the guy that we thought was crook, and he indeed was, and they indeed caught him. So after he caught him, maybe a day or two later, the hotel came to us, the four guys, and said, "What can we do for y'all? Y'all helped us out to catch this guy." And somebody said, "Well, you don't have anything going on here much on Monday night, do you?" And they said, "No." So they gave us the theater to have our assembly meetings for the Society of American Magicians. And it got to be such a really nice place. It was kind of stair-step level, and they had nice big chairs, and they had a desk kind of work thing in front of you. And so that became our home for like 2 to 3 years. And when we'd have a guy come in like Charles Gotchi from Australia, when he would come in, he would tell us, you know, I've been to a lot of places and given lectures all over the world, but y'all have the nicest club meeting place of anybody that I've ever been to. So that indeed was what happened, and the four of us were a part of it. And I'll tell you some more stories in a minute, but that's how we kind of got started being together and trying to help the assembly.
Well, that's,
Yay.
what's our situation, Chris?
Situation normal.
You don't need to finish that. How many
No,
people?
we have a few people hanging out.
Okay,
No one else has said that they have a story to share. But Brad Henderson got his COVID shot,
well,
and it's kicking his ass right now. So that's part of the experience. You can feel it working.
well, if we were all together in person, there are a few people that couldn't be here, so that's one of the advantages to Zoom events.
You bet.
And if we were all here together, we would have done exactly what you all were doing, which is sharing some stories and talking, visiting, waiting for other people to come. Ron, the regular meeting was recorded, so you'll be able to see what you missed. But we've recorded you too. Would you like to tell one more story before we shut it down?
Sure.
Okay. So, I don't know if I've ever done a broken wand ceremony without Ron talking about. So, I mean, he's got to stick around. So when I go and somebody does a broken wand for me, Ron's going to have some stories.
Well, this story is about Doc Seaton and myself pretty much. But we went to a convention, a magic convention in Lubbock, Texas. And the deal was that we didn't go together. Doc got up there some way, and I was in a car and had about 4 magicians from Austin going up with me. And we made it up there, okay, all of us. And Doc came over to me and he said, Ron, you gonna run for president of the assembly next year? And I said, no, I don't want to be president. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, if you don't run for president, Opie Houston is going to kill this club. And I said, well, I don't want to be president. And he said, well, he said, why don't you think it over during the convention and let me know before you go home back to Austin? And I said, well, I'm pretty sure about it. He said, I'll tell you what, if you'll run for president, I will run for vice president. And I got to thinking about that, and I said, I think both of us, you know, we have two-year terms. That was our plans. And we figured that, or at least I figured, that we could do some good with Doc Seaton on the team. And so I said, okay, I'll run for president. There were actually 3 of us running for president. Myself, Opie Houston, and that big guy, I can't remember his name now, but there were 3 of us that were running. And I think Opie saw the distance on the wall, and he kind of dropped out of the race, and I won. And so Doc Seaton, I told him, all right, I'll be president for 2 years, but just 2 years. And he said, okay, and I'll be president for 2 years, just 2 years. And I said, okay. So we took over the assembly that Opie left us. It was full of magicians, 23 to be exact. And by the time Doc and I left office, we had 220 magicians on the road.
Wow.
We were the 2nd largest magic club in the world behind New York City.
Wow.
And it was not just Doc and I being president. I mean, we had some tools. I had some leadership tools that I picked up when I was president of the Austin JCs. And Doc had some money. And he would, when we'd have like Kent Cummings do a lecture or something, Doc would pay for the printing of a booklet. And the deal was that you had to be on time to get a booklet or a surprise. And as Kent showed us one time when he passed out some candy at a meeting, I thought.
Yeah.
And but we worked hard together. We were a good team, and I love Doc, and I hate to see him go. And I went by to see him about 2 days before he passed. And he was a great guy. And one more story real quick, that he went to, he had gone to one of our Magic Club meetings, and he was getting ready to go home, and he stopped by at this famous restaurant on South Congress in South Austin, and walked in there. I can't remember who the guy was that was sitting there, but he was sitting at a table, and he was a superstar. And he saw Doc come in, he says, because Doc looked a little ragged, and he said, well, where have you been? And he said, oh, I've been in a Magic Club meeting. He said, can you show me a trick? And he went down there and he performed for him, and the guy was amazed, and I think that was the biggest star that he ever performed for. And I did the same thing on the football field.
You know who that was?
Hmm?
Willie Nelson.
Oh, it was Willie now.
That's right. Doc Seaton,
Exactly right.
the old guy that didn't know much about magic, fooled Willie Nelson with the card trick. And you see why it was important for us to wait around and chat a little bit until Ron got here. Such an important part of Doc's magic legacy. But now, I think it's time to shut it down. All good things must come to an end. Thanks everybody for participating. If you've ever been to Doc's house, you know why we have candy all over the tables. Good night.
I know it's over, but if anybody's listening, I have the bio